Growing up in Lakeside, Rachel always had a talent for claiming my accomplishments as her own. When I was 10, she convinced our parents that my science fair project should be entered under her name because she could present it better. At 13, my carefully crafted short story mysteriously became her English assignment, the one that won a regional writing contest. By 16, I'd learned to keep my achievements and ambitions hidden from my older sister's watchful eyes. But how do you hide a business plan that could change people's lives? I'm Olivia Parker, 28 now. But this story begins 3 years ago, right after I graduated with my MBA from State University. This is the story of betrayal, resilience, and how sometimes losing everything is the first step to gaining something greater. But before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Most of my classmates were sending out resumes to corporate recruiters before graduation day even arrived. Not me. I spent my evenings in a corner booth at Riverside Café, laptop open, surrounded by market research and prototype sketches. Everyone thought I was crazy. Everyone except Dr. Chen, my entrepreneurship professor. The idea came to me during my health economics seminar. The statistics were staggering. Millions of Americans were spending billions on wearable fitness technology, yet most abandoned their devices within 6 months. Meanwhile, healthcare costs were skyrocketing because preventive wellness remained inaccessible to average people. The data showed a massive disconnect between technology, personalization, and accessibility. That's when Genesis struck me, a comprehensive wellness platform that would democratize health technology. It wasn't just another fitness app. Genesis would combine affordable wearable sensors with sophisticated AI to create truly personalized health recommendations. The platform would adapt to each user's unique physiology, preferences, and goals, making wellness guidance accessible to everyone, not just the wealthy or tech-savvy. The beauty of Genesis, I explained to Dr. Chen one afternoon, spreading my business model across her desk, is that it breaks down the barriers between complex health data and practical daily choices. Our algorithm translates medical-grade metrics into simple, actionable recommendations. I showed her the prototype interface I'd designed. The home screen displayed a holistic health score with customized nutrition suggestions, exercise recommendations, and stress management techniques, all tailored to the individual's specific data patterns and goals. And the best part? We can offer the basic platform for under $20 a month, with the premium sensors available through a subsidized monthly payment plan. That's less than half what competitors charge, and our technology is more advanced. Dr. Chen studied my financial projections, nodding slowly. This has remarkable potential, Olivia. The market timing is perfect, and your approach to accessibility could disrupt the entire wellness tech industry. Her validation fueled me. I spent the next 3 months refining every aspect of Genesis. I programmed a working prototype with my coding skills from undergrad. I conducted focus groups with diverse participants to ensure the interface was intuitive for all demographics. I even secured provisional patents for the adaptive algorithm at the heart of the system. By late August, my business plan was comprehensive and polished. Financial projections, market analysis, competitive positioning, technical specifications, implementation timeline. Every detail meticulously researched and documented. I felt ready to seek initial funding. You should present this at the Parker family dinner, Jasmine suggested during our weekly coffee date. Your parents have those business connections, and Rachel works in health tech marketing now, right? She might have insights. I hesitated, mindful of my history with Rachel. I don't know, Jazz. You know how Rachel can be. Come on, Liv. You're adults now. This is a legitimate business proposition, not a childhood accomplishment she can claim. Besides, your parents are always saying they wish you had Rachel's business sense. This is your chance to show them what you've been working on. Perhaps it was the coffee, or maybe I was riding the high of Dr. Chen's encouragement, but Jasmine's argument resonated. It was time to stop hiding my light. Rachel was busy with her own career. Surely she'd grown past our childhood rivalry. That decision, to share Genesis with my family, was the first in a chain of events that would both destroy and remake my life. The monthly Parker family dinner was a tradition Dad insisted upon, even after Rachel and I had moved out. Mom spent all day preparing her famous roast with Yorkshire pudding, and Dad selected wine from his modest collection. That September evening was particularly beautiful, with a late summer sunset casting golden light through the dining room windows of their Maple Ridge home. Rachel arrived last, as usual. She'd driven in from her downtown condo, dressed impeccably in a designer dress. That probably cost more than my monthly rent. As the marketing director for a health products company, she'd cultivated an image of polished professionalism that our parents adored. "So, how's the job search going, Olivia?" Dad asked as we settled around the table. "Any promising leads?" The familiar dismissiveness in his tone, the assumption that my MBA would simply lead to a corporate job like Rachel's, strengthened my resolve. "Actually," I replied, "I'm not looking for traditional employment. I've been developing a business concept, and I'd like to share it with you all tonight." "Another one of your projects?" Dad sighed, exchanging a glance with Mom that clearly communicated their lack of faith. Rachel raised an eyebrow, fork paused halfway to her mouth. "This isn't just a project, Dad. It's a comprehensive business plan for a wellness technology platform called Genesis. I've been working on it for months." I removed my tablet from my bag and pulled up my presentation. As I began explaining the concept, I noticed something I hadn't seen from Rachel in years. Genuine interest. Her usually dismissive expression shifted to one of focused attention as I outlined the market gap Genesis would fill. "The problem with current wellness technology," I explained, "is that it's either too simplistic to be useful or too complex for average users to maintain. Genesis bridges that gap with adaptive AI that simplifies complex health data into personalized recommendations." I walked them through the interface prototype, the technology architecture, and the pricing model designed to make premium health insights accessible to middle-income consumers. As I spoke, Rachel's interest intensified. She leaned forward, studying each slide with unusual concentration. "The total addressable market is projected to reach $300 billion globally by 2025, I continued, showing my market analysis. "Our research indicates that with first-mover advantage and our proprietary algorithm, we could capture 2% of the domestic market within 3 years, generating approximately $40 million in annual recurring revenue." "And how much startup capital would this require?" Dad asked, his tone shifting from dismissive to cautiously curious. "Based on my projections, we need $350,000 for initial development, regulatory compliance, and go-to-market strategy. That would fund us through proof of concept and early customer acquisition, at which point we'd be positioned for a Series A round with institutional investors." Dad nearly choked on his wine. $350,000? "Olivia, be realistic." "It's actually quite reasonable for a tech startup," I countered, prepared for this reaction. The health tech companies Rachel's firm markets to raised an average of $2.1 million in seed funding last year. I've kept our burn rate exceptionally lean. "It's an interesting concept," Rachel interjected, surprising everyone at the table. She had rarely supported any of my initiatives. "The AI angle is particularly compelling. The personalization features could revolutionize how people engage with their health data." A warm sense of validation washed over me. Was Rachel finally seeing me as a colleague rather than a little sister to be outdone? "You really think so?" I asked, unable to hide my eagerness for her approval. "Absolutely," she smiled, reaching across the table. "Mind if I look through your business plan more closely?" My team works with several wellness brands. I might have some marketing insights to offer. I handed her my tablet without hesitation, grateful for her interest. Of course, I'd love your feedback. Looking back, I should have recognized the calculating glint in her eyes. It wasn't professional interest or sisterly support, it was assessment. Rachel was evaluating my idea not to help me, but to determine its value for herself. But in that moment, blinded by the rare experience of her approval, I missed all the warning signs. Rachel spent the rest of dinner reviewing my materials, asking pointed questions about the technology architecture, target demographics, and revenue model. Questions I now realize were designed to extract information rather than offer assistance. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Your customer acquisition strategy is solid, she commented. But have you considered partnering with established wellness brands for distribution? I know several that might be interested. That's actually something I've been exploring, I admitted, outlining my thoughts on strategic partnerships. Rachel nodded, typing notes into her phone. After dinner, Rachel's behavior shifted dramatically. She called regularly over the next few weeks, offering suggestions and asking for clarification on technical details. She even invited me to lunch to discuss potential investor connections. I was thrilled by this unexpected alliance with my usually distant sister. She's finally treating me like an equal, I told Jasmine over coffee one morning. It feels like we're actually becoming friends. Jasmine looked skeptical. Just be careful, Liv. People don't usually change their patterns overnight. She's matured, I insisted. We both have. Besides, she's introducing me to some of her business contacts next week. But those introductions never materialized. The meetings Rachel arranged always seemed to get rescheduled, then canceled altogether. Still, her continued interest in Genesis kept my suspicions at bay, until the day everything fell apart. It was a crisp October morning. I was at Riverside Café, finalizing my pitch deck for a meeting with a potential angel investor Dr. Chen had connected me with. My phone buzzed with a news alert from the local business journal. The headline stopped my heart. Local health tech marketing director launches revolutionary wellness platform. The accompanying photo showed Rachel smiling confidently in front of a sleek logo for Vital Sync, a first-of-its-kind personalized wellness platform combining wearable technology with artificial intelligence to deliver customized health recommendations. My business, my idea, my dream. With trembling hands, I scrolled through the article. Rachel was quoted extensively about her passion for democratizing health technology and how VitalSync represented months of intensive development and market research. The article mentioned that she had secured $500,000 in initial funding from family investors and strategic partners. Family investors? My parents. I called Rachel immediately, my voice barely controlled as she answered. I was wondering when you'd call, she said coolly. How could you? I choked out. That's my business, my concept, my entire plan. Your concept, she corrected smoothly. Vital Sync is my execution. Ideas without implementation are worthless, Olivia. You've been talking about Genesis for months without taking concrete action. I saw an opportunity and seized it. That's business. You stole everything, I nearly shouted, drawing looks from other cafe patrons. The technology specifications, the algorithm design, the market positioning, these were all documented in my business plan. I adapted a concept, she replied dismissively. Let's be honest, who's better positioned to make this successful? Me, with my industry connections and marketing experience, or you with your coffee shop dreams and zero business track record? I hung up and immediately called my parents, certain they would see the injustice once I explained. I was wrong. Rachel presented us with a comprehensive plan. Dad said, his voice stern but uncomfortable. She has the experience, the professional network, the corporate know-how. It made sense to back someone with a proven track record. But it's my idea, I insisted, tears threatening. She stole my entire business model. Oh, honey, Mom sighed. You're just upset because Rachel is implementing something similar to what you were thinking about. You should be proud that your concept had merit. Maybe she can even hire you once Vital Sync is established. Hire me for my own business. She secured patents for my technology, I said, a new realization dawning. How did she develop the algorithm so quickly? She's been working with a development team, Dad explained, sounding impressed. She showed us prototypes that were quite sophisticated. Of course she had. She'd had my prototype, my code, my entire technical architecture. She'd simply hired developers to recreate what I'd built and documented. Did you invest in her company? I asked, already knowing the answer. A pause. We provided initial capital, yes, along with some of our friends from the country club. It's a solid investment opportunity, Olivia. The same parents who had dismissed my request for funding had emptied their retirement accounts for Rachel. The betrayal was complete. That night, alone in my apartment, I scrolled through social media, watching as congratulatory messages poured in for Rachel's innovative new venture. Local news outlets picked up the story. Health tech innovation comes to Lakeside, read one headline. Vital Sync revolutionizes personal wellness, proclaimed another. My parents proudly shared photos from a launch event I hadn't known about. Mom stood beaming beside Rachel, Dad giving a speech about his visionary daughter. The same vision he had dismissed as unrealistic when it came from me. I closed my laptop and stared out the window at the darkness. The pain was physical, a hollowness that seemed to consume me from within. 3 months of work, my entire post-graduation effort, stolen and now celebrated by the very people who should have been my strongest supporters. But as I sat there in the quiet of my apartment, something inside me shifted. The ache of betrayal hardened into something else, something colder and more focused, a determination that bordered on clarity. They thought I was just a dreamer? Fine. They thought Rachel was the only one who could succeed? I would prove them wrong. They believed my idea was valuable enough to steal but not to support? I would show them exactly what they had missed. I opened my laptop again, but not to check social media or news articles. I created a new folder titled Phoenix. Inside it, I started a fresh document. That night marked the beginning of a new chapter, one that would eventually lead to both Rachel's downfall and my unexpected rise. But the path forward would be longer and more complicated than I could have imagined. And the most powerful ally in my journey would come from the most unexpected place. The next morning, I awoke with a sense of purpose that cut through my grief. If Rachel wanted to play in the wellness tech space with my stolen concept, I'd need to create something that would make Vital Sync look primitive by comparison. But first, I needed to understand exactly what I was up against. I created a fake email address and signed up for Vital Sync's early access program using Jasmine's address for delivery. Within a week, I had the Vital Sync wearable sensor and access to their platform. As I navigated through the interface, my suspicions were confirmed. This was unquestionably my technology, from the adaptive algorithm to the personalized recommendation engine. But there were crucial differences. Rachel had repositioned the platform as a luxury wellness service with pricing to match. $89. $99 monthly subscription plus $299 for the sensor. She'd abandoned the accessibility that was core to my vision, instead targeting affluent professionals with disposable income. The interface was sleeker, more visually polished than my prototype, but the underlying functionality was identical. Most importantly, I discovered a critical flaw. Rachel had implemented my algorithm, but she clearly didn't understand how it worked. The system was supposed to recalibrate based on user feedback and physiological data trends, but VitalSync's version had static response parameters. It might work initially, but without proper maintenance and updates, the recommendations would become increasingly generic over time. "She's built a Maserati with a faulty engine," I told Jasmine as we examined the platform together. "It looks impressive, but it won't perform as promised long-term." "So what are you going to do?" Jasmine asked. "Report her for intellectual property theft?" I shook my head. My provisional patents might not hold up against her corporate legal team, and litigation would drain resources I don't have. I closed the VitalSync app and pulled up my new Phoenix folder. I'm going to build something better. Phoenix wasn't just an improved version of Genesis. It was an entirely new approach to wellness technology, one that would render VitalSync obsolete. Where Genesis focused on individual health metrics, Phoenix would create an interconnected wellness ecosystem. Users would still receive personalized recommendations, but they'd also become part of community-based wellness initiatives, with options to share insights, participate in group challenges, and contribute to anonymized population health research. Most critically, Phoenix would incorporate something VitalSync couldn't replicate: a learning system that evolved with each user interaction, becoming more personalized and effective over time. The dynamic algorithm would be light years beyond the static system Rachel had implemented. I spent 2 weeks drafting the Phoenix concept, careful not to document anything on shared cloud services or devices that might be compromised. Once I had a solid framework, I knew I needed technical help. I reached out to Aidan Nichols, a brilliant programmer I'd collaborated with on a healthcare database project during my MBA program. We met at a small coffee shop across town, far from my usual haunts where Rachel's connections might spot us. "This is ambitious," Aidan said, reviewing my technical specifications. "The community integration alone would require significant back-end development, not to mention the enhanced machine learning capabilities." "Too ambitious?" I questioned. He grinned. "Not at all, just challenging enough to be interesting. But we'll need resources, server infrastructure, development tools, regulatory compliance experts." "I know," I sighed. "That's the catch. I need funding, but I can't approach traditional investors without revealing the concept, and I can't risk Rachel getting wind of this." "What about Dr. Chen?" Aidan suggested. "She's always supported your work, and she has connections in both academia and business." Dr. Chen agreed to meet me the following day. I'd always respected her sharp business acumen and ethical approach to entrepreneurship, but I hadn't realized the extent of her connections until our conversation. "Your sister's actions are unfortunately common in the startup world," she said after I explained the situation. "Idea theft happens, especially to women entrepreneurs, but her implementation weaknesses create an opportunity." I showed her my Phoenix concept, explaining how it transcended my original Genesis platform. Her eyes lit up as she reviewed the technical architecture and business model. "This isn't just an incremental improvement, Olivia. This is a paradigm shift in how wellness technology could function." She studied me for a moment. "I know someone who might be interested in this approach, someone who values innovation and ethical business practices." "An investor?" I asked. "Hopefully." "More than that. A potential strategic partner. His name is Marcus Trevino." The name meant nothing to me then. I'd soon learn that Marcus Trevino was a successful tech entrepreneur who had built and sold 2 healthcare technology companies. His most recent venture, Helix Innovations, focused on democratizing access to healthcare through technology, an ethos that aligned perfectly with Phoenix. Dr. Chen arranged a meeting for the following week at a private conference room in the university's business school. The location was deliberately chosen to avoid industry attention. I spent every waking moment preparing my presentation, determined not to squander this opportunity. When I arrived, Dr. Chen was already there with a tall man in his early 40s. dressed in a casual button-down and jeans. No flashy watch or designer labels, just an understated confidence that filled the room. "Olivia, this is Marcus Trevino," Dr. Chen introduced us. "Marcus, Olivia Parker." His handshake was firm. "Dr. Chen speaks highly of you, Ms. Parker. I'm interested to hear about Phoenix." For the next hour, I presented my vision for Phoenix, detailing the technology architecture, market positioning, and community-based approach. I explained the situation with Rachel and Vital Sync without emotionality, focusing on the technical and market differentiation Phoenix would offer. Marcus asked pointed questions about scalability, data privacy, and regulatory compliance, areas I had thoroughly researched. He seemed particularly interested in the community health insights component. "What you're describing isn't just a wellness platform," he said after I finished. "It's a potential revolution in preventative healthcare and population health management. The ability to aggregate anonymized trends while providing hyper-personalized guidance could transform how we understand wellness patterns." He leaned back, studying me intently. "But why should I believe you can execute this vision when your sister has already launched a similar product with substantial backing?" It was the question I'd been dreading, but also preparing for. "Because Vital Sync is built on a fundamental misunderstanding of the technology," I replied confidently. "Rachel copied my interface and algorithm, but she doesn't understand how the system should evolve. Their recommendations will become increasingly generic over time, leading to user disappointment and churn. Phoenix, by contrast, is designed with adaptive learning as its foundation, not just a feature." I pulled up comparison projections showing how Phoenix's effectiveness would increase over time, while Vital Sync's would plateau or decline. "More importantly," I continued, "I understand both the technology and the genuine human need it serves. This isn't just a business opportunity for me. It's about making personalized wellness guidance accessible to everyone, not just those who can afford premium subscriptions." Marcus nodded slowly, then turned to Dr. Chen. "Could you give us a moment?" Once we were alone, his demeanor shifted from evaluative to collaborative. "I've been following the wellness technology space for years, Ms. Parker. Most innovations are incremental at best, focusing on capturing market share rather than creating genuine value. What you're proposing is different." He paused, seeming to make a decision. "I'm prepared to fund Phoenix's development, but on one condition: absolute confidentiality until we're ready to launch. No family discussions, no social media updates, no LinkedIn profile changes. Complete stealth mode." My heart raced. "You're offering to invest without a completed prototype?" "I'm offering more than investment," he clarified. "Helix Innovations will provide full incubation support, development resources, regulatory guidance, market testing, and eventual distribution infrastructure, in exchange for a 30% equity position." The offer was better than anything I could have hoped for. Full development support and funding from a respected industry leader, with me retaining majority ownership. "There's one more thing," he added. "I want this launched with maximum impact. That means timing the announcement strategically, potentially in direct contrast to Vital Sync's market position." I understood what he was implying. He wasn't just offering to help me build a business. He was proposing a competitive strategy that would position Phoenix as the antithesis to Vital Sync's approach. "When do we start?" I asked, extending my hand. "We already have," he replied, shaking it firmly. The next morning, I received an encrypted email with contract documents and access credentials for Helix Innovations' secure development platform. By afternoon, I had signed the agreements and transferred my Phoenix documentation to their system. By evening, I had a meeting scheduled with Helix's development team. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. I relocated to a small apartment near Helix's development center, operating under strict confidentiality protocols. Aiden joined as lead developer, and we assembled a team of specialists in machine learning, user experience design, and healthcare integration. Marcus proved to be far more than a financial backer. He became a mentor and strategic advisor, pushing me to refine Phoenix beyond my original vision. His experience navigating regulatory requirements and scaling health tech platforms proved invaluable. The key differentiator will be the community health insights, Marcus emphasized during one of our strategy sessions. Vital Sync offers individual recommendations, but Phoenix creates connection while maintaining privacy. That's revolutionary in this space. While we built Phoenix in the shadows, I kept tabs on Vital Sync's progress. Rachel's marketing expertise had generated substantial buzz, with features in health and technology publications praising the platform's innovation. Early user reviews were positive, focusing on the sleek interface and personalized recommendations. Vital Sync appeared to be thriving. But 6 months into its launch, cracks began to appear. User forums reported inconsistent recommendations and frustration with the limited customization options. The algorithm's static nature was becoming apparent as users progressed in their wellness journeys. Vital Sync's customer service was overwhelmed, with requests for more personalized guidance, exactly what the system should have been providing automatically. Rachel responded by adding more human coaching services at premium price points, essentially patching the technology's limitations. With expensive human intervention, it was a viable short-term solution, but undermined the scalability that made the concept valuable in the first place. Meanwhile, Phoenix was evolving into something far more sophisticated than I had initially envisioned. Our development team had created a dynamic ecosystem that not only provided personalized recommendations, but learned from aggregate user patterns while maintaining strict privacy protections. The Phoenix interface was intuitive yet powerful, with adjustable complexity to serve both tech-savvy users and those with limited digital experience. Most importantly, we had built an infrastructure that could scale to millions of users without compromising personalization. 9 months after my meeting with Marcus, Phoenix was ready for beta testing. We recruited a diverse group of 500 users, carefully selected to represent various demographics, wellness goals, and technology comfort levels. The results exceeded even our optimistic projections. Beta users reported significantly higher satisfaction with Phoenix's recommendations compared to other wellness platforms they had tried. The community features fostered engagement and accountability, with users logging in an average of 5 times more frequently than industry standards. Most tellingly, our retention rate after 3 months was 92%, nearly triple the industry average. As we prepared for launch, Marcus suggested a bold strategy. Vital Sync is holding their first annual wellness conference next month, he noted during our planning meeting. They've invited health tech journalists, influencers, and potential partners. It would be the perfect time to announce Phoenix. The timing wasn't coincidental. Vital Sync was facing increasing user dissatisfaction as the limitations of their system became more apparent. Rachel had recently announced a major platform update scheduled to be revealed at the conference, likely an attempt to address the mounting criticism. Marcus's suggestion was strategically brilliant, but personally daunting. Launching Phoenix at Rachel's event would create maximum industry impact, but it also meant confronting my sister and parents in a very public setting. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Jasmine asked when I shared the plan with her. "It's going to create serious family drama." "This isn't about family drama," I replied, more confident than I felt. "It's about bringing the right solution to market." Phoenix was always meant to democratize wellness technology, not serve as a luxury product for the privileged few. The Midwest Health Innovation Conference was held at the Westlake Convention Center, a gleaming glass structure in downtown Lakeside. Vital Sync banners adorned the entrance, with Rachel's professional headshot welcoming attendees. The irony wasn't lost on me. Our team arrived the day before the conference began, setting up a modest booth strategically positioned near the main presentation hall. Unlike VitalSync's elaborate display with multiple demo stations and branded giveaways, our booth was intentionally understated. Just the Phoenix logo, a stylized bird emerging from circular data points, against a clean backdrop with tablets for demonstrations. The contrast was deliberate. We weren't selling flash, we were offering substance. I spotted Rachel during the opening reception, working the room with practiced charm. She was dressed impeccably as always, moving confidently among industry executives and health tech journalists. Our parents stood nearby, pride evident in their expressions as they watched their elder daughter hold court. None of them noticed. Me. They didn't know I was there. Marcus had ensured that Phoenix's exhibition application listed Helix Innovations as the parent company, with no mention of my name in the public materials. The first day of the conference passed without direct interaction. I attended sessions on wellness technology trends and healthcare integration, taking notes and observing the competition. VitalSync representatives highlighted their premium coaching services and upcoming platform enhancements, carefully avoiding mention of the algorithm limitations users had been reporting. On the second day, Rachel was scheduled to deliver the keynote address, unveiling VitalSync's next-generation features. Our team gathered in the presentation hall, blending in with the crowd of industry professionals. Marcus sat beside me, his expression revealing nothing as Rachel took the stage to enthusiastic applause. "Welcome to the future of personalized wellness," Rachel began, her voice confident and polished. "When I founded VitalSync, I envisioned a world where technology could truly understand individual health needs and provide guidance as unique as each user." I bit my tongue at her casual claim of founding the company with my concept. Rachel continued, "Today, I'm thrilled to announce VitalSync 2.0, featuring enhanced personalization through our proprietary dynamic response system, expanded premium, coaching options, and exclusive partnerships with luxury fitness brands." The presentation was masterful from a marketing perspective, with slick videos and testimonials from satisfied users. But to anyone with technical knowledge, it was clear that the dynamic response system was merely a more complex version of the same static algorithm, now with more decision branches, but still fundamentally limited. When the Q&A session began, Marcus nudged me gently. "Now's your chance." Heart pounding, I approached the microphone in the center aisle. Rachel didn't recognize me immediately, her professional smile firmly in place as she called on, "The attendee in the blue blazer." "Thank you for your presentation," I began, my voice steadier than I expected. "You mentioned the dynamic response system as a solution to personalization challenges. Can you explain how VitalSync addresses the fundamental limitation of static, algorithmic parameters when user needs evolve beyond predetermined response pathways?" Rachel's smile faltered slightly as recognition dawned. Her eyes widened almost imperceptibly, but she recovered quickly. "An excellent question," she replied smoothly. VitalSync's approach combines algorithmic recommendations with human coaching, expertise, ensuring that our technology is always supplemented by professional guidance. "So, the underlying algorithm still doesn't truly learn from user interactions?" I pressed. "It requires human intervention to remain relevant as users. Progress?" A flash of irritation crossed Rachel's face. "Our system incorporates multiple feedback mechanisms to refine recommendations. The premium coaching simply enhances this process." "Thank you for the clarification," I said, then turned to address the audience. "For those interested in truly adaptive wellness technology, I invite you to visit Phoenix at booth 157 following this session. We're demonstrating a system that evolves with each user interaction, no premium coaching required." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Rachel's expression hardened, but the moderator was already calling on another attendee with a question. I returned to my seat, adrenaline coursing through me. "Well played," Marcus whispered. Subtle, but effective. When Rachel's session ended, our booth was suddenly swarmed with curious attendees, industry analysts, health tech journalists, and potential partners crowded around as Aiden and I demonstrated Phoenix's adaptive learning capabilities and community features. Most significantly, we highlighted the accessible pricing model, $24, $99 monthly with flexible payment options for the sensor hardware. The technology appears significantly more responsive than other platforms I've tested, commented a prominent health tech reviewer, comparing Phoenix directly to VitalSync on adjacent tablets. And the Community Health Insights feature is genuinely innovative. Midway through the demonstrations, I noticed Rachel standing at the edge of the crowd, her expression unreadable. Our eyes met briefly before she turned and walked away, phone already pressed to her ear. I continued the presentation, focusing on Phoenix's mission to democratize personalized wellness guidance. By the end of the conference, Phoenix had generated substantial buzz. Several health tech publications requested interviews, and potential distribution partners expressed interest in collaboration discussions. Most telling was the reaction from VitalSync's exhibition staff, who were suddenly fielding questions about their algorithm limitations compared to Phoenix's adaptive system. As we packed up our booth materials on the final day, I received a text from an unknown number. My office, 30 minutes. Rachel. Marcus advised against meeting her alone. She's rattled and looking to regain control. Nothing productive will come from a private confrontation. He was right, of course, but this wasn't just business for me. Despite everything, Rachel was still my sister, and we had unfinished business. I needed this conversation, not for Phoenix, but for myself. I'll be fine, I assured him. This is something I need to do. Rachel's temporary office was in a quiet corner of the convention center, away from the bustle of departing exhibitors. When I entered, she was standing by the window, staring out at the city skyline. She had removed her blazer, and for a moment she looked smaller, less imposing than the confident executive who had commanded the keynote stage. So, she said without turning, Phoenix, clever name. Rising from the ashes of Genesis, I presume? Something like that, I replied, remaining by the door. She finally turned to face me. Who's backing you? It's not just development resources you've somehow acquired. Someone with industry influence is involved. Does it matter? You have your business, I have mine. Rachel laughed, but there was no humor in it. Of course it matters, Olivia. You've positioned Phoenix as a direct competitor to VitalSync, deliberately undermining our premium market positioning with your accessible pricing model. I'm implementing my original vision, I stated plainly. Democratizing wellness technology was always the point. You chose to turn it into a luxury product. Because that's where the profit margins are, she snapped, her composure cracking. Your original model would have taken years to become profitable. I made a business decision based on market realities. After stealing my entire concept, I reminded her, keeping my voice even. You took my work, my idea, my code, then convinced our parents to fund you instead of me. They invested in the better business case, Rachel countered. And they were right. VitalSync has been profitable from Q1. With an unsustainable model, I pointed out, your user retention is already declining. The algorithm doesn't evolve, and people are noticing. Adding expensive human coaching doesn't solve the fundamental technology limitation. Rachel's expression tightened. She moved to her desk and leaned against it, studying me with new intensity. You've changed, she observed. The Olivia I knew would have been emotional, indignant. You're different now. I had to be, I said simply. Who's your investor, Olivia? Is it Helix Innovations? Marcus Trevino? The fact that she had identified Marcus so quickly confirmed my suspicions that she had already been investigating Phoenix's backing. Phoenix speaks for itself, I replied. Our technology, our model, our mission, they stand on their own merits. Rachel straightened, her business persona reasserting itself. Listen to me carefully. You're making a mistake launching a direct competitor. VitalSync has market position, investor backing, and strategic partnerships you can't match. You should be looking for an acquisition offer, not trying to compete head-to-head. The suggestion was so predictable, it almost made me smile. Rachel still thought she could control the situation, that I would be willing to sell Phoenix to VitalSync, allowing her to acquire the adaptive technology her platform lacked while eliminating competition. Phoenix isn't for sale, I stated. Firmly. Especially not to VitalSync. Don't be foolish, she pressed. You could walk away with several million, retain a senior development role, and we could put this unfortunate situation behind us. The family dynamics alone make competition untenable. The family dynamics were your choice, I reminded her. You made your decisions. I've made mine. Rachel's expression hardened. Mom and Dad remortgaged their house to invest in VitalSync. Their retirement depends on our success. Are you really willing to jeopardize their financial security over a business rivalry? The manipulation was so transparent it should have been laughable, but the mention of our parents still struck a nerve. I hadn't known about the remortgage. Their investment decisions aren't my responsibility, I said, more coldly than I intended. Just like my business decisions aren't yours. Phoenix launches nationwide next month. We won't be reconsidering. I turned to leave, but Rachel's voice stopped me at the door. This isn't over, Olivia. You're playing a game you don't understand with people you can't afford to antagonize. I looked back at her, suddenly feeling oddly calm. That's where... You're wrong, Rachel. I understand exactly what I'm doing, and I'm not playing any game. As I walked away, I realized that the conversation had given me something unexpected. Closure. For years, I had lived in Rachel's shadow, seeking her approval while resenting her dominance. Now, facing her as an equal competitor, I felt liberated from patterns that had defined our relationship since childhood. Phoenix wasn't just my business redemption, it was my personal emancipation. The following month was a blur of preparation for Phoenix's nationwide launch. Our team expanded rapidly, with specialists in customer support, content development, and community management joining the core technical staff. Marcus arranged meetings with health insurance providers interested in potential partnerships, seeing Phoenix's preventative approach as a way to reduce their long-term claims. Throughout this period, I maintained radio silence with my family. Mom called several times, leaving increasingly concerned voicemails about this uncomfortable business situation and how we needed to work things out as a family. Dad sent a terse email suggesting I consider Rachel's acquisition offer for everyone's benefit. I responded to neither. Rachel was more direct in her approach. VitalSync's legal team sent a letter alleging intellectual property concerns and suggesting that Phoenix's technology might infringe on their proprietary systems. It was a transparent intimidation tactic without legal merit. Phoenix's architecture was entirely different from VitalSync's implementation, and we had comprehensive documentation of independent development. Our legal team responded with a brief letter stating that Phoenix's technology was properly patented and developed independently, along with a gentle reminder that questioning the provenance of algorithmic approaches might invite unwelcome scrutiny of VitalSync's own development. History? We heard nothing further from their lawyers. 2 days before Phoenix's official launch, I received an unexpected visitor at our newly opened headquarters. I was reviewing final deployment protocols with Aiden when Jasmine appeared at my office door, her expression worried. Your mom's here, she said quietly. In reception. She's pretty insistent about seeing you. I hesitated, caught off guard by my mother's unexpected appearance. For a moment, I considered having Jasmine tell her I was unavailable, but that seemed unnecessarily harsh. Whatever her reasons for coming, I could at least hear her out. Send her back, I said finally, closing my laptop. And could you let Marcus know? He's in the conference room with the marketing team. Jasmine nodded and disappeared. A few minutes later, my mother walked tentatively into my office, looking out of place among the sleek, modern furnishings. She seemed smaller somehow, her usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled, as though she'd been rushing. "Olivia," she said softly, hovering by the door. I stood, but didn't move to embrace her. "Mom, this is a surprise." She glanced around the office, taking in the Phoenix logo on the wall behind me, the multiple monitors displaying analytics dashboards, the whiteboard covered in launch strategy notes. "This is quite impressive," she admitted. "Thank you," I replied, gesturing to a chair across from my desk. "Please, sit down." She perched on the edge of the seat, clutching her purse like a lifeline. "We need to talk, Olivia. This situation, it's gotten out of hand." "What situation exactly?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "This business competition between you and your sister. It's tearing the family apart." She leaned forward earnestly. "Rachel is beside herself. She's hardly sleeping, constantly worried about Vital Sync's position now that Phoenix is launching." I felt a flicker of bitter amusement. Rachel was worried about competition, not about family relationships, but my mother was framing it as a family crisis. "That's unfortunate," I said evenly. "But business competition is normal in this industry. Vital Sync and Phoenix offer different approaches to wellness technology. The market will decide which they prefer." "But your sisters," Mom insisted, her voice rising slightly. "Families should support each other, not become rivals." The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Was Rachel supporting me when she stole my business concept? Were you and Dad supporting me when you invested in her company, instead of even considering my request for startup funding? Mom flinched. We didn't understand the situation fully. Rachel presented Vital Sync as her own innovation. "Which you readily believed?" I interjected, despite knowing I'd been working on a wellness platform for months. "She had a track record in marketing health products," Mom countered weakly. "It seemed like a natural extension of her expertise." I leaned back in my chair, studying her. There was something she wasn't saying, some urgency beyond family harmony that had brought her here. "Why are you really here, Mom? This isn't just about family reconciliation." She shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. "Your father and we invested significantly in Vital Sync. Not just our savings, but we took out a second mortgage on the house." So there it was. "And now you're worried Phoenix will impact Vital Sync's success, jeopardizing your investment." "It's not that simple," she protested. "Rachel has been approached by wellness partners about a potential acquisition. It would be a substantial offer, enough to secure our retirement and give Rachel a senior position in their organization." "But," I prompted, sensing the catch. "But they've put everything on hold pending Phoenix's launch. They're concerned about market fragmentation and competing technologies." She looked at me directly for the first time. "If Phoenix were to delay its launch, or perhaps consider some form of collaboration with Vital Sync instead of direct competition, the acquisition could proceed." The picture became clear. This wasn't about family harmony. It was about securing a lucrative exit for Rachel and my parents' investment before Phoenix could disrupt Vital Sync's market position. "Let me understand," I said slowly. "You want me to delay Phoenix's launch or agree to some vague collaboration with the sister who stole my business so that she can sell Vital Sync at a premium before consumers have a chance to compare the two platforms?" Mom winced at my characterization but didn't deny it. "When you put it that way, it sounds calculating. But this is about family security, Olivia. Your father and I aren't getting any younger. This acquisition would secure our future." "And what about Phoenix's future? Our investors, our team members who've worked tirelessly to build something genuinely innovative? Should I compromise their interests for Rachel's benefit?" "Couldn't you find a middle ground?" she pleaded. Some arrangement that benefits everyone? Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door, and Marcus entered. He extended his hand to my mother with a polite smile. "Mrs. Parker, I'm Marcus Trevino, Phoenix's strategic partner. Olivia has told me about your family." Mom looked startled by his arrival, but recovered quickly, shaking his hand. "Mr. Trevino, I didn't realize you were involved with Phoenix." "Very much so," Marcus confirmed. "I've invested considerably in Olivia's vision because I believe it represents the future of accessible wellness technology." His emphasis on accessible was subtle but pointed. "I hope I'm not interrupting an important conversation." Mrs. Parker was just suggesting that Phoenix delay its launch or consider collaboration with VitalSync, I explained. Apparently, VitalSync has a pending acquisition offer from Wellness Partners that's contingent on reduced market competition. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "I see. That would certainly be beneficial for VitalSync's valuation." He turned to my mother. "Mrs. Parker, I respect family concerns, but Phoenix represents more than a business to Olivia and our team. It's a mission to democratize health technology that has been traditionally available only to privileged demographics." Mom bristled slightly. "VitalSync provides valuable services to its customers at price points that exclude the majority of potential users," Marcus pointed out. "Phoenix was developed specifically to address that limitation, among others." He glanced at his watch. "Olivia, we have the final platform review in 10 minutes. Would you like me to reschedule?" It was a graceful exit offer, and I took it gratefully. "No need. We're about finished here." I turned to my mother. "Mom, I understand your concerns about your investment, but Phoenix will launch as planned. We've worked too hard and built something too important to compromise now." She stood, clutching her purse tightly. "So that's it? You'll risk your family's financial security for this? Competition with your sister? You risked our relationship when you chose to fund Rachel's theft of my idea," I replied, keeping my voice gentle despite the harsh words. "I'm not responsible for your investment decisions or Rachel's business challenges. Phoenix deserves its chance to succeed on its own merits." Mom's expression hardened momentarily, then crumpled into something like defeat. "Your father will be so disappointed." "I'm sure he will be," I acknowledged. "But I'm doing what's right for Phoenix and its mission. I hope someday you'll understand that." Marcus politely escorted my mother out, returning a few minutes later, with a concerned expression. "Are you all right?" I exhaled slowly, processing the confrontation. "Yes, it wasn't unexpected, just poorly timed." "Your mother seems genuinely worried about their financial situation," he observed. "They gambled their retirement on Rachel's business acumen," I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "Now they want me to compromise Phoenix to protect their bet." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "It's a difficult position, but remember, Phoenix's success doesn't necessarily mean VitalSync's failure. The wellness market is expanding rapidly enough to support multiple platforms, especially ones targeting different demographics." "Try telling that to Wellness Partners," I sighed. "They're clearly spooked about Phoenix's potential impact." "Which actually validates our approach," Marcus pointed out. "If they're hesitating, it means they recognize Phoenix as a significant market disruptor." He checked his watch again. "The team is waiting. Are you ready for the final review?" I pushed aside thoughts of family complications and nodded firmly. "Absolutely. Phoenix launches in 2 days, no matter what." The next 48 hours passed in a whirlwind of final preparations. Our development team ran exhaustive system checks, marketing finalized launch communications, and customer support completed their training on the platform's features. Despite my mother's unexpected visit and the revelation about VitalSync's potential acquisition, I remained focused on Phoenix's imminent debut. The night before launch, our team gathered for a celebratory dinner at a local restaurant Marcus had reserved entirely for the occasion. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation, everyone aware that the months of quiet development were about to culminate in Phoenix's public emergence. "Tomorrow, we change the wellness technology landscape," Marcus announced, raising his glass in a toast, "to Olivia's vision and the extraordinary team that brought Phoenix to life." The room erupted in applause, and as I looked around at the faces of people who had believed in Phoenix, in me, I felt a surge of gratitude and determination. Whatever happened with Vital Sync or my family, this moment validated every difficult decision and sleepless night. Later that evening, as I was leaving the restaurant, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Last chance to reconsider. Once Phoenix launches, certain doors close permanently." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Launch day arrived with perfect execution. At exactly 9 a.m. Eastern, Phoenix went live simultaneously across all major platforms. Our social media campaign activated, press releases were distributed, and our carefully cultivated network of health and technology influencers began sharing their pre-access reviews of the platform. Within hours, download numbers were exceeding our most optimistic projections. User registrations were climbing steadily, and early feedback was overwhelmingly positive. The community features in particular were generating considerable excitement, with users immediately beginning to form wellness groups based on shared goals and interests. By midday, technology blogs were publishing their first impressions, most noting Phoenix's accessibility and adaptive learning capabilities as key differentiators. In the crowded wellness app market, several specifically compared Phoenix to Vital Sync, highlighting the price difference and Phoenix's unique community-based approach. "The democratization of premium wellness technology," wrote one influential reviewer. "Phoenix delivers Vital Sync level personalization at 1/3 the cost, with community features that transform solitary health tracking into a supportive social experience." As positive coverage mounted, Marcus appeared in my office doorway with a tablet in hand. "You might want to see this," he said, passing me the device. It displayed a press release from Wellness Partners. Wellness Partners announces acquisition of Vital Sync Technologies has been terminated. The brief statement cited changing market conditions and emerging competition as factors in the decision. Rachel had lost her acquisition deal. My parents' investment was now tied to Vital Sync's ability to compete directly with Phoenix, a competition that technical limitations put them at a disadvantage to win. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt a complicated mix of vindication and concern. I hadn't launched Phoenix to harm my family, only to realize the vision I'd originally created. "Are you okay?" Marcus asked, studying my expression. "It's complicated," I admitted. "I didn't want this outcome specifically, but it was inevitable once Phoenix launched." "Business is business," he reminded me gently. "Vital Sync will adapt or struggle based on its own merits, just like any company facing superior competition." He was right, of course. Rachel had made her choices, and now she would face the consequences of building a business on stolen ideas, without understanding the technology that made them valuable. As the day progressed, Phoenix continued to exceed expectations. By evening, we had registered over 50,000 users and were trending on Twitter with the hashtag #MoreWellnessForAll. Our customer support team reported overwhelmingly positive interactions, with users particularly enthusiastic about the platform's intuitive design and personalized onboarding experience. I was reviewing the day's metrics when Aiden appeared at my door, his expression uncharacteristically serious. "Olivia, there's something you should know. Someone's trying to access our back-end systems." My stomach dropped. "A security breach?" "An attempt," he clarified. "They're probing for vulnerabilities in our API endpoints. Our security protocols caught it immediately, but it's a sophisticated approach, not random hackers." "Can you trace the source?" I asked, already suspecting the answer. Aiden hesitated. "The attempts are being routed through multiple proxy servers, but some patterns match Vital Sync's development infrastructure. I closed my eyes briefly, absorbing this new betrayal. Not content with stealing my original concept, Rachel was now apparently attempting to hack Phoenix's systems, perhaps to extract our adaptive algorithm or simply to disrupt our successful launch. Lock everything down, I instructed. Implement the enhanced security protocols we developed for post-launch, and document everything. If this is vital sync, we may need evidence. Aiden nodded and hurried out. I sat back in my chair, a cold anger settling in my chest. This crossed a line from business competition into potentially illegal activity. If Rachel was behind this, she was risking not just Vital Sync's reputation, but her personal freedom. I called Marcus immediately, explaining the situation. We need to respond decisively, I concluded. This isn't just about protecting Phoenix. It's about establishing that we won't be intimidated or victimized. I agree, Marcus said grimly. I'll have our legal team prepare cease and desist letters to Vital Sync and alert the FBI's cybercrime division about the unauthorized access attempts. We won't file a formal complaint yet, but we'll establish a record of the incidents. The security team worked through the night, strengthening our defenses and documenting the intrusion attempts. By morning, the attacks had stopped, suggesting that whoever was behind them realized they'd been detected. As Phoenix's second day dawned with continued strong performance, I received an unexpected call from my father. It was the first time. He'd contacted me directly since the Vital Sync launch. We need to talk, he said without preamble, his voice tight with restrained emotion. Not on the phone, in person. I'm rather busy today, Dad, I replied coolly. Phoenix just launched yesterday. I'm aware, he said, an edge creeping into his tone. That's precisely why we need to meet. This situation has become untenable. I sighed, knowing this conversation was inevitable. Fine. I can meet you for lunch at Riverside Café at noon. Your mother and I will be there, he stated, then hung up without waiting for a response. I briefed Marcus on the impending family meeting, and he offered to accompany me, but I declined. This is something I need to handle myself, I explained. Family dynamics won't be solved with business strategies. Riverside Café held a certain irony as a meeting place. It was where I'd developed the original Genesis concept that Rachel had stolen. When I arrived, my parents were already seated at a corner table, my father looking stern and my mother visibly anxious. Olivia, my father acknowledged as I sat down. No hug, no warmth, just crisp formality. Dad, Mom, I responded evenly. I understand you wanted to talk. Dad leaned forward, hands clasped tightly on the table. Wellness Partners has withdrawn their acquisition offer for Vital Sync, he stated, as though I might not be aware. Your launch has effectively devalued your sister's company by millions overnight. Phoenix is a different product targeting a different market segment, I pointed out. If Vital Sync's value was predicated on being the only player in personalized wellness technology, that was never a realistic expectation. This isn't about market expectations, he snapped. This is about loyalty, family. Your mother and I invested everything in Vital Sync. Our retirement savings, our home equity, all of it. Which was your choice, I reminded him calmly. You decided to fund Rachel after she appropriated my business concept, a concept you dismissed when I presented it to you. We didn't understand its potential then, Mom interjected, her voice pleading. We made a mistake, Olivia. But punishing us by launching a competing business isn't the answer. Phoenix isn't punishment, I said firmly. It's the realization of my original vision, making personalized wellness technology accessible to everyone, not just wealthy consumers. Rachel chose to implement a luxury version that contradicted that core mission. Dad's face reddened. So you'll bankrupt your family for some idealistic notion of accessibility? Vital Sync's entire value proposition has been undermined by Phoenix's pricing model. I studied him, realizing fully for the first time how entitled his perspective was. Did it ever occur to you that Rachel's business model was fundamentally flawed? That restricting access to wellness technology through premium pricing was both ethically questionable and commercially vulnerable? "Don't lecture me about business ethics," he growled. "I've been in business longer than you've been alive. And yet you invested your retirement in a company built on stolen intellectual property," I observed quietly. "That doesn't demonstrate sound business judgment." The barb hit home. Dad leaned back, his expression darkening. "So that's it? You'll watch your sister's company fail and your parents lose everything because of some principle?" I took a deep breath, maintaining my composure. "Phoenix will succeed or fail based on its own merits, just like Vital Sync. The difference is that Phoenix was built on original innovation and authentic vision, while Vital Sync was constructed from appropriated ideas implemented without understanding their fundamental architecture." "What does that even mean?" Mom asked, confusion mingling with exasperation. "It means Rachel took my interface and algorithm but didn't understand how they worked or how they should evolve. Vital Sync's technical limitations were inevitable because she copied the form without comprehending the function." Dad dismissed this with a wave. "Technical details can be fixed. What matters is that we're facing financial ruin because of your competitive vendetta." I felt a surge of frustration at his persistent failure to acknowledge the real issue. "This isn't a vendetta, it's business. Rachel chose to steal my concept instead of collaborating or developing her own. You chose to fund her knowing the concept originated with me. These were business decisions with business consequences." "And what about family consequences?" Mom asked tearfully. "We'll lose our home, Olivia. Does that mean nothing to you?" The emotional appeal stung, but I refused to be manipulated again. "Of course it matters. You're my parents, and I care about you. But I won't compromise Phoenix's mission or betray my investors and team to bail out Rachel's flawed business model." Dad's expression hardened. "So you'll do nothing?" I paused, considering my next words carefully. "I didn't say that. There might be a solution that protects your investment without compromising Phoenix's integrity, but it would require Rachel to accept some difficult realities." "What kind of solution?" Mom asked eagerly, seizing on this glimmer of hope. "Phoenix could potentially acquire certain Vital Sync assets. Its user base, some proprietary content, perhaps its coaching network. Not a merger, but a limited acquisition that would provide some return on your investment while allowing Phoenix to incorporate valuable components into our ecosystem." Dad looked skeptical. "Rachel would never agree to sell to you." "That would be her choice," I acknowledged. "But it might be her best option given Vital Sync's current position and technical limitations." "You're asking her to surrender to her younger sister," Dad said, shaking his head. "You know how impossible that would be for her." "I'm offering a business solution to a business problem," I corrected him. "Rachel's pride versus your financial security. That's a family calculation I'll leave to you." I stood to leave, placing my napkin on the table. Phoenix's offer would be fair and professionally structured. We'd value Vital Sync's assets objectively and propose terms that respect its existing contracts and relationships. Beyond that, I can't compromise further. "That's your final position?" Dad asked, his voice tight. "It's the only viable path forward that serves both family concerns and business realities," I replied. "Rachel can contact Marcus directly if she's interested in discussing terms." As I turned to go, Mom caught my hand. "Olivia, please. We're still family, despite everything." I squeezed her hand gently. "Yes, we are. That's why I'm offering a solution instead of simply competing Vital Sync into obsolescence, which would be the ordinary business approach." Walking back to Phoenix headquarters, I felt oddly lighter, as though a burden had shifted. I had established boundaries with my family while still extending an olive branch. Whether Rachel would accept it was beyond my control, but I had done what I could to balance family obligations with business integrity. When I returned to the office, Phoenix's momentum was continuing to build. User registrations had surpassed 100,000, and engagement metrics showed people weren't just downloading the app. They were actively using it, creating profiles, joining communities, and engaging with the personalized recommendations. Most gratifyingly, our user demographics showed we were indeed reaching the broader audience we'd targeted. Unlike VitalSync's affluent urbanite user base, Phoenix was being adopted by people across income levels, age groups, and geographic regions. The accessible pricing model was achieving exactly what we'd hoped, democratizing access to personalized wellness guidance. I briefed Marcus on my conversation with my parents, including the potential asset acquisition I had proposed. "It's a generous offer," he observed, "especially considering the circumstances. Would you really want to integrate VitalSync components into Phoenix?" "Selectively, yes," I confirmed. Their coaching network includes some genuinely excellent wellness professionals, and their content library has value. The technology itself is limited, but certain assets could enhance Phoenix's offerings without compromising our core architecture. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. It would also be a clean resolution to the family situation. Your parents recover some of their investment, Rachel saves face with a partial acquisition rather than outright failure, and Phoenix expands its resources. Exactly, I agreed. The question is whether Rachel's pride will permit her to consider it. We didn't have to wait long for the answer. That evening, as I was preparing to leave after another long day, the office security system announced a visitor in the lobby, Rachel. "Send her up," I instructed after a moment's hesitation. This conversation was inevitable, and better to have it in my territory than hers. When Rachel stepped into my office, I was struck by how different she looked from the polished executive who had dominated the conference keynote just days earlier. Her expression was tense, her typically impeccable appearance showing subtle signs of strain, slightly creased blouse, hair not quite perfectly styled. "Nice offices," she commented, glancing around. Helix Innovations clearly invested significantly. "Marcus believes in Phoenix's potential," I replied simply. "Please, sit down." She perched on the edge of a chair, her posture rigid. "Dad told me about your proposal, an asset acquisition instead of a merger or full company purchase. It seemed the most practical solution given the circumstances," I explained. "VitalSync has valuable components that could enhance Phoenix's offerings, while allowing your investors, our parents included, to recover some of their capital." Rachel's jaw tightened. "You're offering to cherry-pick VitalSync's best assets, while leaving the shell of the company behind. That's hardly generous." "It's business," I replied, echoing her own words from months earlier. VitalSync's technology architecture doesn't align with Phoenix's, but certain components have standalone value. I'm offering a practical solution, not charity. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" she asked bitterly. "Watching me lose the Wellness Partners deal, being forced to consider selling pieces of my company to my little sister." I studied her, for a moment, recognizing the wounded pride beneath her hostility. "I take no pleasure in our parents' financial jeopardy," I said carefully. "As for the rest, this situation is entirely of your making, Rachel. You chose to appropriate my business concept rather than develop your own or collaborate honestly." She looked away, a muscle working in her jaw. "I saw an opportunity and took it. That's how business works." "Not sustainable business," I countered. "You built VitalSync on a flawed foundation, technically and ethically. The market is simply revealing those flaws now." Rachel stood abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked the city. "The intrusion attempts on your systems," she said after a moment, her back still turned. "That wasn't authorized by me." I hadn't expected this admission. "But it came from VitalSync." She nodded slightly. "Our CTO took initiative without my knowledge. He's been terminated. That was a federal crime, I pointed out, not just a personnel issue. I'm aware, she said tightly. That's partly why I'm here. I need this situation resolved before it escalates further. The implication was clear. She was concerned about potential legal repercussions beyond business competition. If Phoenix filed charges related to the hacking attempts, VitalSync's problems would multiply exponentially. I have no interest in pursuing legal action as long as the attempts have genuinely stopped, I assured her. Phoenix is focused on growth, not retribution. Rachel turned back to face me, her expression guarded. What exactly would your asset acquisition entail? Which components would you value, and at what price? I reached for a folder on my desk. I've prepared a preliminary outline. We're primarily interested in your coaching network, content library, and certain distribution partnerships. We'd offer fair market value as determined by independent valuation experts. She took the folder without opening it. And VitalSync, as an entity, would likely need to wind down operations, I acknowledged. Its core technology doesn't integrate with Phoenix's architecture, and maintaining two separate platforms wouldn't be economically viable. She flinched slightly at the blunt assessment. You've thought this through. It's business, I repeated her mantra once more. Not personal. Rachel laughed humorlessly. Of course it's personal, Olivia. It's always been personal between us. I didn't disagree. Our rivalry had defined our relationship for as long as I could remember, but this was the first time I hadn't been the one at a disadvantage. Will you consider the proposal? I asked, bringing the conversation back to practical matters. She tapped the folder against her palm, considering. I'll review it with our board. It's not my decision alone, especially with outside investors involved. Of course, I nodded. Marcus is available to discuss details whenever you're ready. Rachel moved toward the door but paused before opening it. How did you do it? She asked, genuine curiosity breaking through her defensive posture. Build something like Phoenix from scratch after losing Genesis? Most people would have given up. I believed in the vision, I said simply. Not just the business opportunity, but the mission. Making wellness technology accessible to everyone, not just those who can afford premium services. She studied me for a moment longer, something like reluctant respect flickering in her expression. You've changed, she observed, echoing her words from our confrontation. You're not the sister I grew up with. No, I agreed quietly. I'm not. After she left, I remained at my desk, reflecting on our conversation. For the first time in our relationship, Rachel had acknowledged me as an equal. Not explicitly, but in the way she negotiated, the questions she asked, the respect underlying her hostility. It was a subtle shift, but a profound one. Over the next week, Phoenix continued its successful trajectory while VitalSync's position deteriorated further. User migration from their platform to ours accelerated as word spread about Phoenix's superior performance and affordability. Industry analysts began questioning VitalSync's viability as an independent entity, with several suggesting that acquisition by a larger competitor was their only sustainable path forward. 10 days after our meeting, Rachel contacted Marcus to formally discuss the asset acquisition proposal. The negotiations were surprisingly straightforward, with VitalSync's board recognizing their limited options and focusing on maximizing value for their investors. Within 2 weeks, we had a signed agreement. Phoenix would acquire VitalSync's coaching network, content library, and key distribution partnerships for $2 million, a fraction of what Wellness Partners had originally offered, but enough to return most of my parents' investment capital. The day the acquisition closed, I received a text from my mother. Thank you for finding a solution. We'd like to have dinner soon. Just family, no business talk. It was a small olive branch, but a meaningful one. The family wounds wouldn't heal immediately. but at least we had a foundation to build upon. 3 months later, Phoenix had established itself as the market leader in accessible wellness technology. Our user base exceeded 1.5 million, with engagement metrics that outperformed industry standards by substantial margins. The Vital Sync assets had integrated smoothly, enhancing our premium offering while maintaining our commitment to accessible base-level services. Rachel had accepted a position with a healthcare marketing firm in San Francisco, a strategic distance from Lakeside and the shadows of both Vital Sync and Phoenix. Our relationship remained complicated, but the acute antagonism had subsided into something more like mutual respect, albeit from a distance. My parents had downsized to a smaller home, their retirement plans adjusted but not destroyed. Dinner conversations carefully navigated around business topics, focusing instead on rebuilding family connections fractured by betrayal and competition. As for me, Phoenix had transformed from a redemption project into my life's work. The platform continued to evolve, expanding into new wellness dimensions and reaching populations traditionally underserved by health technology. Marcus and I had developed a genuine partnership based on shared values and complementary strengths. 1 year after Phoenix's launch, I was invited to give the keynote address at the same conference where Rachel had once proudly presented Vital Sync. Standing at the podium, looking out at the audience of industry professionals, I reflected on the journey that had brought me there. True innovation isn't just about technology, I told the attentive crowd. It's about purpose. About asking, not just what's profitable, but what's needed. Not just what will sell, but what will serve. In the back of the room, I spotted Marcus nodding approvingly. Beside him, unexpectedly, sat my parents, my father looking uncomfortable in the tech-heavy environment, my mother smiling tentatively. The most valuable lessons in business often come from our greatest challenges, I continued. For me, losing my original concept forced me to reimagine what was possible, to build something not just different, but better. Phoenix rose from that experience not as a replica of what was lost, but as something entirely new. As I concluded my speech to enthusiastic applause, I realized that the ordeal with Rachel had given me something unexpected, not just a successful business, but a clearer understanding of my own strength and resilience. In attempting to diminish me, Rachel had inadvertently pushed me to achieve something far greater than either of us had initially imagined. Sometimes losing what you thought you needed becomes the catalyst for creating what you were meant to build all along. And sometimes the people who try to stand in your way end up being the ones who ultimately, unwittingly, clear your path forward. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows of Phoenix headquarters as I reviewed our quarterly performance metrics. 18 months had passed since our launch, and the numbers told a story of remarkable growth. Monthly active users had surpassed 3 million. Retention rates were industry-leading at 74%, and our community features were generating engagement levels that competitors could only dream of achieving. The former Vital Sync assets had integrated seamlessly into our ecosystem, with the coaching network proving particularly valuable as we expanded into more specialized wellness areas. The acquisition had been a strategic masterstroke, not just resolving the family financial crisis, but genuinely enhancing Phoenix's offerings. A knock at my office door interrupted my review. Jasmine poked her head in, excitement evident in her expression. "They're here! The whole team is waiting in the conference room." I closed my laptop and took a deep breath. Today marked a milestone I'd once thought impossible: the formal announcement of Phoenix's Series B funding round, valuing the company at $580 million and providing capital for international expansion. More significantly, today was the first time my entire family would visit Phoenix headquarters together. The journey to this moment had been complex. After the Vital Sync asset acquisition, my relationship with my parents had slowly mended through cautious Sunday dinners and holiday gatherings where business topics remained carefully off limits. My father had eventually found consulting work that supplemented their retirement income, and my mother had developed a surprising late-career interest in digital literacy, even volunteering to teach seniors how to use technology. Rachel had been the final piece of the reconciliation puzzle. After relocating to San Francisco, she had maintained distance from family gatherings for several months. Her pride had been wounded, her professional identity shaken by Vital Sync's collapse. But gradually, tentatively, she had reestablished contact, first with our parents, then with me through brief, surprisingly cordial emails about industry developments. 6 months ago, she had accepted a position as Chief Marketing Officer for a healthcare analytics firm in Chicago, closer to home, but still maintaining professional independence from my orbit. When I invited the family to attend today's funding announcement, I had expected Rachel to decline. Her acceptance had been as surprising as it was meaningful. I straightened my blazer and headed to the conference room, where our leadership team, key investors, and selected media representatives waited alongside my family. As I entered, Marcus came forward to greet me, his expression reflecting the significance of the day. "Ready for this?" he asked quietly. "More than ready," I assured him. The room was arranged with Phoenix's characteristic understated elegance. The company logo projected on one wall, comfortable seating arranged in a semicircle, refreshments discreetly available at a side table. My parents sat together near the front, my father looking unexpectedly proud in a new suit. My mother elegant in a blue dress she'd mentioned buying especially for this occasion. Rachel stood slightly apart, engaged in conversation with our Chief Technology Officer. She looked different somehow, still polished and professional, but less rigid, her gestures more relaxed as she discussed something that made both of them laugh. When she caught my eye, she offered a small nod of acknowledgement. Marcus called the gathering to order, welcoming everyone to a significant milestone in Phoenix's remarkable journey. He spoke briefly about the company's mission and growth trajectory before introducing our lead Series B investor, Victoria Harmon of Elevation Capital. Victoria's presentation was concise but powerful, outlining why Elevation had chosen to lead Phoenix's $120 million funding round. "What distinguishes Phoenix in the crowded wellness technology space," she explained, "is not just its technological superiority or impressive growth metrics, but its fundamental commitment to accessibility. While competitors focus on premium segments, Phoenix has demonstrated that inclusivity and profitability can coexist brilliantly." She presented a slide showing Phoenix's market penetration across diverse demographic segments. "These numbers tell a compelling story," she continued. "Phoenix has achieved what many thought impossible, bringing sophisticated wellness technology to populations traditionally underserved by digital health platforms." As Victoria detailed the expansion plans that Series B would fund, including European and Asian market entry, enhanced AI capabilities, and new strategic partnerships, I found myself watching my family's reactions. My father was nodding along with investor speak he clearly appreciated, while my mother beamed with undisguised pride. Rachel's expression was more complex, thoughtful, analytical, with occasional flashes of what might have been admiration. When Victoria concluded, Marcus returned to the podium. "The vision that has driven Phoenix from concept to market leader belongs to one person," he stated. "She refused to compromise on her mission of democratizing wellness technology, even when faced with significant obstacles. I'm proud to introduce Phoenix's founder and CEO, Olivia Parker." The applause as I took the stage was gratifying, but what touched me most was seeing my entire family standing together, clapping with genuine enthusiasm. Even Rachel, though more reserved than our parents, was participating without apparent reluctance. "Thank you all for being here today," I began. "Phoenix's journey has been extraordinary by any measure. From concept to Series B in under 2 years is uncommon in any industry, particularly one as competitive as wellness technology." I advanced to the first slide of my presentation, showing Phoenix's initial interface design alongside the current version. We've evolved significantly since our launch, but our core mission has remained constant, making personalized wellness guidance accessible to everyone, not just those with premium resources. As I outlined Phoenix's accomplishments and future direction, I found myself deviating slightly from my prepared remarks. Success in business is rarely a straight line, I observed. Often, our greatest innovations emerge from our most significant challenges. The roadblocks and detours that seem like setbacks at the time frequently lead us to destinations far better than our original destination. My eyes met Rachel's briefly, and I continued. Phoenix wasn't my first attempt at creating a wellness platform, but the lessons learned from earlier experiences proved invaluable. They forced me to reimagine what was possible, to build something more comprehensive, more inclusive, and ultimately more impactful than my initial concept. It was as close as I would come to publicly acknowledging the Vital Sync situation, but the subtext was clear to those who knew our history. Rachel's expression remained neutral, but she held my gaze steadily, a silent communication passing between us. I concluded by introducing our executive team, inviting each to briefly explain their role in Phoenix's evolution and future plans. The formal presentation transitioned into a networking reception, with investors mingling with team members and media representatives capturing statements for industry publications. As I circulated through the room, fielding questions and accepting congratulations, I kept peripheral awareness of my family's movements. My parents spoke proudly with anyone who would listen, occasionally embellishing their early support for my entrepreneurial ambitions in ways that made me smile despite their revisionist history. Rachel remained more reserved, engaging primarily with technical team members and asking surprisingly insightful questions about Phoenix's architecture. Eventually, I found myself at the refreshment table alongside my sister, both of us momentarily separated from the surrounding conversations. The silence between us felt less strained than it might have a year earlier, but still weighted with unresolved history. Elevation Capital is an impressive partner, Rachel commented, breaking the silence. Victoria Harmon doesn't invest in companies unless she sees billion-dollar potential. She believes in Phoenix's mission, I replied. The technology impressed her, but the accessibility model was what ultimately convinced her to lead the round. Rachel nodded thoughtfully. It's a stronger approach than VitalSync's premium positioning, she acknowledged, surprising me with her candor. I recognized that too late. The admission hung between us. Not quite an apology, but the closest Rachel had come to acknowledging her strategic misstep. Your marketing expertise could have been valuable if we'd collaborated originally, I offered, extending a similar olive branch. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Perhaps. Though I doubt we would have worked well together. Back then. She glanced around the room, taking in the Phoenix team's evident camaraderie. You've built an impressive culture here. People seem genuinely invested in the mission. They are, I confirmed. We've been deliberate about hiring people who believe in democratizing wellness technology, not just those with impressive resumes. Rachel sipped her sparkling water, studying me over the rim of her glass. You know, when we were growing up, I always thought of you as the idealistic one, too focused on principles to succeed in business. She set her glass down carefully. I was wrong about that. Your principles didn't hinder Phoenix. They became its competitive advantage. Coming from Rachel, this represented extraordinary recognition. I felt a complicated warmth spread through my chest. Not quite forgiveness for past betrayals, but something like the beginning of mutual respect. Your new role in Chicago, are you enjoying it? I asked, shifting to safer ground. Actually, yes, she replied, her expression lightening. Kinetic Health has a fascinating approach to healthcare analytics, and she hesitated, then continued. With uncharacteristic openness, It's refreshing to build something entirely on my own merits, without family complications. Before I could respond, my parents approached, my father's arm proudly around my mother's shoulders. "There are my girls," Mom said with forced brightness, still awkwardly navigating the complex dynamics between her daughters. "Together at last." "The presentation was impressive, Olivia," Dad said, his tone carrying genuine admiration I'd rarely heard directed at my accomplishments. "Victoria Harmon's growth projections for Phoenix are extraordinary." "Thank you," I replied, still adjusting to this new paternal approval. "The team has worked incredibly hard to reach this milestone." "Well, we never doubted you would succeed," Mom declared with the selective memory that had become her emotional coping mechanism. "We always knew you had something special with Phoenix." Rachel caught my eye, the shared awareness of our mother's revisionist history passing silently between us. To my surprise, I saw humor in my sister's expression rather than bitterness, a conspiratorial recognition of our mother's predictable tendency to rewrite uncomfortable narratives. "Phoenix's success speaks for itself," Rachel said diplomatically. "Olivia has created something genuinely innovative." The acknowledgement, delivered in a professional context where Rachel had always been most competitive, felt momentous despite its simplicity. My parents exchanged surprised glances at this unexpected harmony between their daughters. "We should celebrate properly," Dad suggested, seizing the moment. "Dinner tonight at Montello's, just family, my treat." "I'd like that," I said sincerely, recognizing the gesture for what it was, an attempt to nurture this fragile new family equilibrium. "Marcus and I need to finish some things here, but I could meet you at 7. "I'm available," Rachel confirmed, checking her watch. "My flight back to Chicago isn't until tomorrow afternoon." As my parents moved away to continue mingling, Rachel lingered a moment longer. "I should congratulate your technical team before I go. The adaptive learning system Phoenix has developed is genuinely impressive, far beyond what we attempted." With vital sync. "Aiden would appreciate that," I told her. "He led the machine learning architecture." She nodded, then hesitated before adding, "For what it's worth, Olivia. I understand now what I didn't then." The vision wasn't just about personalized recommendations. It was about creating access and community around wellness. You saw that from the beginning. The acknowledgement wasn't an apology for her betrayal, but it was a recognition of my intellectual contribution that Rachel had previously denied. Coming from her, it represented significant growth. "Thank you," I said simply. "That means something, especially today." After Rachel moved away to speak with our technical team, Marcus joined me, observing my expression with his characteristic perceptiveness. "Family reconciliation?" he inquired quietly. "Something like that," I replied. "Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe understanding. Progress." "Significant progress," he noted. "A year ago, I wouldn't have believed all 3 of them would be here celebrating Phoenix's success." I watched as Rachel engaged animatedly with Aiden about technical details, her professional respect for Phoenix's accomplishments evident despite our complicated history. My parents stood nearby, my father explaining something about investment metrics to my mother with the same tone he'd once used to dismiss my business aspirations. "People can change," I observed. "Not completely, not quickly, but incrementally, given the right circumstances." "Speaking of change," Marcus said, "the Bloomberg reporter is particularly interested in Phoenix's expansion plans for underserved markets. Should I direct her to you or Victoria?" The question pulled me back to the present moment, to Phoenix's milestone day and the responsibilities it entailed. "I'll speak with her," I decided. The Underserved Markets Initiative is especially important to communicate correctly. As the reception continued, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The betrayal that had once devastated me had ultimately catalyzed something far more significant than I'd originally envisioned. Without Rachel's theft of Genesis, I might never have created Phoenix, never have connected with Marcus, never have pushed beyond my initial concept to develop something truly transformative. The thought wasn't about gratitude for the betrayal, but recognition that our greatest setbacks sometimes force us onto paths we wouldn't otherwise have discovered. Rachel's actions had been wrong, unethical, and hurtful in ways that couldn't be entirely undone. But my response to that betrayal had defined me more profoundly than the injury itself. Later that evening, as my family gathered around a table at Montello's, the conversation flowed with surprising ease. Rachel shared insights from her new position in Chicago. My father discussed his consulting work, and my mother proudly described her digital literacy volunteer program at the community center. When the waiter brought champagne, my father raised his glass. To Phoenix, he toasted, and to Olivia, who proved me wrong in the best possible way. To Phoenix, my mother echoed warmly. Rachel met my eyes across the table, raising her glass with a small but genuine smile. To vision, she added quietly, and resilience. As we clinked glasses, I recognized that some wounds heal not through perfect resolution, but through transformation, becoming different kinds of connections altogether. My relationship with Rachel would never return to innocent sisterhood. Too much had transpired between us. But perhaps we were forging something new, a relationship based on mutual respect and recognition of each other's genuine strengths. The meal progressed with stories and laughter that would have seemed impossible 18 months earlier. When dessert arrived, my mother broached a subject that surprised me. "Have you thought about what happens next, Olivia?" she asked. "After Phoenix's international expansion, I mean. There's still so much to accomplish with our current mission," I replied. "Bringing personalized wellness technology to populations without traditional access remains a significant challenge. But surely you have vision beyond Phoenix," she pressed. "You've always been forward-thinking." The question was interesting coming from her, a recognition of my entrepreneurial identity that she had previously failed to acknowledge. I considered my response carefully. "Actually, I've been exploring the potential for Phoenix's technology architecture to address other accessibility challenges," I admitted. "Healthcare navigation, educational resources, financial wellness, our adaptive learning system could be applied in multiple domains where personalization and accessibility don't typically coexist." "A Phoenix group rather than just Phoenix Wellness," Rachel observed with professional interest. "Leveraging your core technology across multiple sectors." "Exactly," I confirmed, surprised by her quick understanding. "The fundamental approach, using adaptive AI to create personalized guidance at accessible price points, has applications far beyond physical and mental wellness." "That's the difference between a company and a vision," my sister noted. "Vital Sync was always limited to a single application because She stopped, correcting herself, because I positioned it too narrowly. The acknowledgement of her mistake, delivered casually in conversation rather than as a formal apology, somehow felt more authentic than any orchestrated mea culpa might have. "Phoenix's mission transcends any single application," I agreed, "which makes our growth potential significantly broader." My father, ever the businessman despite his recent setbacks, leaned forward with interest. "Victoria Harmon clearly sees that potential. The valuation reflects anticipated expansion beyond your current market." "She does," I acknowledged. "Elevation Capital specializes in platforms that can scale across multiple verticals, not just within a single sector." As the conversation continued, exploring potential applications for Phoenix's technology in other domains, I found myself genuinely enjoying my family's engagement with my professional vision. This was the kind of discussion I had longed for when first developing Genesis, thoughtful exploration of possibilities rather than dismissal or appropriation. Rachel's contributions were particularly noteworthy. insightful questions about market positioning and brand architecture that reflected her marketing expertise without attempting to dominate the conversation. She was participating as a knowledgeable professional, neither competitive nor deferential, finding a new balance in our relationship. When dinner concluded and we stood outside the restaurant preparing to part ways, my mother embraced me with unusual emotion. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "Not just for Phoenix's success, but for how you've handled everything. You've shown remarkable grace." The compliment was unexpected, acknowledging not just my professional accomplishments, but my navigation of the family breach, a tacit recognition that the situation had demanded more of me than should have been necessary. My father's handshake was firm, his expression thoughtful. "You've built something significant," he said simply, "something with lasting impact." When Rachel and I found ourselves momentarily alone as our parents hailed a taxi, she turned to me with uncharacteristic directness. "I was wrong," she said quietly. "Not just about business strategy, but about you. I underestimated you in ways that seem incomprehensible now." The admission caught me off guard, more direct than anything she had previously offered. "We both underestimated what was possible," I replied after a moment. "Neither of us envisioned something like Phoenix when this all began." "True," she acknowledged with a small smile, "but you saw possibilities where I saw only competition. That vision made all the difference." We parted with a brief but genuine hug, our first physical contact since before the Vital Sync launch. As I watched my family's taxi pull away, I felt an unexpected sense of peace settling over me. The wounds hadn't vanished, but they had transformed into something different. Scars that marked significant passages rather than open injuries that demanded constant attention. Returning to my apartment that evening, I stood by the window overlooking the city lights, reflecting on the day's events. The Series B funding represented external validation of Phoenix's approach, but the family dinner had offered something equally valuable. A glimpse of potential healing I hadn't quite believed possible. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Today was a milestone in more ways than one. Phoenix's future looks extraordinarily bright." I smiled, typing back, "The best innovations often come from unexpected detours." His response came quickly. "And the most satisfying victories are those that transform more than markets." He was right, of course. Phoenix had begun as my response to betrayal, a determination to create something better than what had been taken from me. But somewhere along the way, it had evolved into something far more significant, a genuine mission to transform how technology served human well-being, making personalized guidance accessible to people who had previously been excluded by price or complexity. The betrayal that had once seemed catastrophic had ultimately pushed me to envision something far beyond my original concept. Without that painful catalyst, Phoenix might never have existed in its current form, might never have reached millions of users across demographic boundaries, might never have attracted investors who shared its mission of democratizing wellness, technology. As I prepared for bed, I noticed the small framed photo I kept on my nightstand, a childhood image of Rachel and me, perhaps 8 and 11, building a sandcastle together at the lake house. We were leaning toward each other, focused on creating something that would inevitably be washed away by the tide, but valuable in that moment of shared creation. The memory sparked a realization. Perhaps our adult relationship would never recapture that uncomplicated collaboration, but we had each found our separate paths to creating value in the world. Rachel's marketing expertise was genuinely valuable. In her new role, just as my technological vision had found its fullest expression in Phoenix. Some relationships don't heal by returning to their original form, but by evolving into something new. Something that honors growth and change rather than attempting to recapture what has been irretrievably altered. My family connections were finding new equilibrium, not through erasure of past wounds, but through acknowledgement of new realities. The next morning, I arrived at Phoenix headquarters early. energized by the previous day's events, and eager to begin implementing our expansion plans. The Series B funding would accelerate our international growth, allowing us to bring personalized wellness guidance to populations across Europe, Asia, and eventually Africa and South America. As I reviewed the project timelines our team had developed, I reflected on how far we had come from those initial sketches at Riverside Café. Phoenix had evolved from a concept born of betrayal into a mission shared by a growing team of dedicated professionals, all committed to the fundamental belief that technology should serve human well-being across demographic boundaries. My assistant knocked gently before entering with my morning coffee. "The leadership team is assembling for the post-funding strategy session," she informed me. "And your sister called. She said to tell you she's looking forward to seeing Phoenix's international launch and thinks you might want to consider healthcare navigation as your next vertical. She mentioned something about Kinetic Health potentially being interested in collaboration rather than competition." I smiled at the message, so characteristic of the new dynamic emerging between Rachel and me. Not quite partnership, not exactly friendship, but a professional respect that acknowledged our separate strengths without the toxic competition that had previously defined our relationship. "Thank her for the suggestion," I replied, "and let her know I'll call her next week to discuss possibilities." As I gathered my materials for the strategy session, I caught sight of my reflection in the office window, confident, focused, ready to lead Phoenix into its next phase of growth. The woman looking back at me bore little resemblance to the devastated entrepreneur who had watched her sister claim credit for her business concept 3 years earlier. That painful experience had transformed me in ways I couldn't have anticipated, forcing me to discover strengths I might otherwise never have recognized, pushing me to create something far more significant than my original vision. The betrayal that had once seemed destructive had ultimately been constructive, though not in any way anyone could have predicted. Some lessons can only be learned through difficulty. Some innovations emerge only when familiar paths are blocked, forcing exploration of uncharted territory. And sometimes, the people who seem to obstruct our progress ultimately propel us toward destinations far better than those we originally imagined. Phoenix had risen not despite betrayal, but because of it, transformed by fire into something stronger, more resilient, and ultimately more impactful than Genesis could ever have been. And I had undergone a similar transformation, no longer defined by what had been taken from me, but by what I had created in response. As I joined my leadership team in the conference room, ready to map Phoenix's expanded future, I carried that awareness with me, not as a burden of past injury, but as profound appreciation for how obstacles often become the very foundations upon which our greatest achievements are built. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.